My friend, Assistant Minister, Honorable Isromi Emmanuel, the President and the Board of the Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation, the CEO, Mr. Kameli Batueti. Good morning. Thank you for a warm welcome and invitation to speak to you this morning. I told my wife this morning, I said, I'm going to have breakfast at GPH. And she said, what's happening there? I said, no, I'm talking to the Commerce and Employers Federation. She said, don't go there and give a lecture. So my response to her was, look, I've given so many lectures in my life, I don't want to give any more lectures. And I said, besides that, I'm going to talk to a group of enlightened, intelligent people who actually know what they're doing. So I'm not here to give you a lecture today. We have been in government, as you know, for just over 2 months. And during this short period, I have met so many people, businesses, senior executives, CEOs, from government, from statutory organizations, and from the private sector, and many other stakeholders around the country. And we've been discussing ways ahead for the country. Of course, we are dealing with a lot of challenges, including the hangover from the COVID pandemic. But more importantly, we have a big challenge. And I don't hesitate to say that we have been left with a deep-rooted mess that we have to deal now as a government. We have started very well. We are working very hard to get rid of the culture of fear, intimidation, and above all, dictatorial decision-making. But more importantly, we want to get rid of this culture of lavishness in government and reckless spending. We want to be different as a government. And I want to make this point very clearly, that we believe as a government that dialogue is very important. Genuine consultation with people like yourselves who know their job, who know what to do. We need genuine dialogue and consultation with you. And we want to listen. And we want to admit that as a government, as ministers, we don't know everything. And we don't want to lecture to people who know what they're supposed to do. Our job is to serve, not to rule. And as a government, we recognize that to achieve sustainable economic growth, we can't carry on with the business as usual approach. As a government, we have to adopt new and innovative ways of thinking, placing greater emphasis on consultation and dialogue and collaboration, genuine collaboration with our stakeholders. And I've been at pains, and my other colleagues, the Honorable Prime Minister as well, we've been at pains to say that we want to work in partnership with all stakeholders, private sector groups, trade unions, civil society organizations, because we believe that a lot of wisdom and knowledge resides out there. Given the tight fiscal situation and the huge burden of debt, and I know that you understand that as well, the role of the private sector and how it repositions itself as the main driver of economic growth over the medium term will be very important. And for us as a government, our role, our objective is to assist and put in place the right legislative and policy environment to allow the private sector to spearhead Fiji's economic recovery. And I think today's breakfast provides an excellent opportunity to lay that kind of environment, lay that kind of thinking and feeling about how we can work together. Promoting private sector-led growth is always an ideal that most governments want to achieve. So, in that regard, we want to move away, because I think in the past there's been a model of economic growth. Supposedly, the thinking behind it was that the public sector-led growth or public sector-driven agenda is going to get the private sector together. We want to move away from that model of public sector-driven growth towards a more sustainable model of private sector-led growth, aided by a conducive legislative environment, targeted government support, including appropriate tax incentives, infrastructure and skills development, and access to market and policy consistency. That is very important. As an economist, I understand the importance of confidence, importance of consistency, importance of certainty in policies. Because the expectation of what happens in the future determines what you as businesses, we as individuals do today. Because you make the decisions today. So government's job is to set that expectation, set that consistency, and provide a pathway. And we can only do that effectively if we listen to you. We want to know what exactly the private sector needs. And we're getting a lot of very, very good ideas. The Honorable Prime Minister and I were in Sabu on Saturday night. And the man who introduced us and welcomed us said, nothing has happened in Sabu for 50 years. And my response to him was, maybe you should have, nothing has happened in the last 15 years. So the question is, how can we make businesses be with us as part of a government? How do we make business processes more streamlined? What can the government do? How can we incentivize existing businesses to reinvest and expand? What is needed to attract foreign direct investment? You know, I said to the people in the Fiji Investment Bureau, I said, what sort of marketing you do? I said, say we go around, we tell people how good Fiji is. But I said, when you go and do that, when they come here and they find that it takes 3 months to open a bank account, then all your effort of marketing goes into reverse, because they are the biggest marketers. They know what needs to be done. How best to equip the workforce to meet your labor needs? Huge challenge. So these are some of the pressing questions that we need to answer and we need to discuss. And that is why, as you already know, we have announced a National Economic Summit on the 20th and the 21st of April. Preparations are well underway, and I'm sure many of you will be able to participate in that. And that is going to be a genuine economic summit of consultation and dialogue. Economic diversification is another area that the government will focus. While we all celebrate the recovery in the tourism industry, I think tourism will remain an integral part of our economy, our GDP, but we need to diversify as well. We need to also look at how we can increase regional development. And there will be some announcements that we will be making in the next couple of months and possibly during the budget about how we can promote tourism development in Vanuatu, how we can increase participation and productivity in the agriculture sector. I had a very interesting session some weeks ago on the digital economy and how the prospects of BPOs look in this country. And there are a lot of new ideas, a lot of innovations, a lot of thinking going around those areas, ICT, light manufacturing, and other areas which could provide Fiji with a competitive advantage. In agriculture, there was some effort by the previous government to commercialize. I think that's the right way to think. We need to raise productivity and competitiveness there. And we also want to, while we do that, support small holder agriculture sector, because that can add to the sustainability of that sector, support the sustainability of incomes in the rural areas. We also need to continue to develop niche products and services for export. We've talked about organic agriculture produce, agro-processing, premium quality garments, tourism diversification. You know, we've been talking about sports tourism, cruise tourism, wedding tourism, retirement villages, medical tourism, and conference tourism, regional communication and transport services, and there are many other sectors. So to support the development of sports tourism, investing in new sporting facilities will meet international standards in terms of quality and capacity. In the primary sector, we will pursue greater value addition in forestry and fisheries. Sustainable ecotourism ventures will also be supported to showcase our unique flora and fauna through activities such as fishing and whale and dolphin watching. We will also promote unique traditional handicrafts, body products, local ceramic ware, exotic herbs and spices. You know, I'm now using my speaking notes, which will provide great opportunities for the economic empowerment of women, cooperatives, and small businesses. Then we have opportunity within the manufacturing sector as well. It's already developed in some sense, but I think there is room for newer and more efficient technologies to be adopted and an expansion of the manufacturing sector together with cost efficiency and achieving economies of scale could put them on even playing field with our foreign competitors. We also feel that apart from the domestic market, there is a need to develop and look at new markets so that our export sector, which in some ways has been quite stagnant over the last several years, and we need to look at that and how we can promote our export sector, and that will come with new technologies, new efficiencies. We understand that we are a small island economy. Our resource base, in some ways, in a global scheme of things, can be termed as narrow. But we also have, great opportunities. But we need to take a cautious approach, as there are headwinds that we face on a daily basis, like natural disasters and extreme weather patterns and effects of those that can be quite debilitating for our economy. Raising national productivity, and as employers, you understand this better. And we hope that at the National Economic Summit, we are able to talk about some of this, how to raise productivity growth in our economy. I have not seen any recent studies which looks at reliable data as to what has happened to productivity growth in our economy, especially labor productivity, and whether we understand how we can improve those productivity. Because if we're not improving productivity, then that can have serious consequences for us in the long run. So we need to bridge that gap between policy and what's happening on the ground to stimulate both labor and capital productivity. On the capital side, I think as businesses, you understand how important it is to look at smart and new technologies, and that is something that government will support. Government will look at how we can incentivize those. We have already announced that we will bring the tripartite process together. We want the employers, government, and the unions to work together. Because if you look at productivity in countries where you have a very conducive, where you have a very peaceful coexistence between government, unions, and employers, you find that you can actually raise productivity. Sometimes we think that unions are always the cause of lack of productivity. Working together with unions can actually help raise productivity. So that is an important undertaking that we have given to the unions, and the government would want to make that happen. We know the situation with our health facilities, and I can say this. I've said this when I was in opposition, and I can say it 2 months in government. That right now, we have one of the worst health services ever in the history of this country. And it's a huge challenge. It has an impact on productivity. It has an impact on the country as a whole. And we as a government, we are determined to improve that. So, in short, what we are looking at, my friends, is to create an environment, create this feeling amongst people like yourselves that the government is here to work with you, to support you, and to learn from you. So, as part of the economic summit, and this week, possibly tomorrow, I'll be announcing a 10 or 11 member fiscal review committee. And the purpose of that fiscal review committee will be to look at specifically government expenditure policy, revenue policy, and tax policy, so that when we go into the budget in the next few months, it's not a surprise. It is something that you can expect. And I want to deliver a budget that will lay certainty, consistency, not just for 1 year, but it will indicate to you as people who need to make decisions, because investment decisions are very important, based on that kind of certainty. And so that committee would be very, very important. We believe also, and I as Minister of Finance, that is my specific objective, that we must make sure that every dollar that our people pay as tax is wisely spent by government. We want to cut wastage. We want to divert that wastage into priority sectors: health, education, skills development, and providing incentives where necessary to ensure that we promote new ideas, new businesses, and new activities. In all this, delivery of government services, and many of you would know, I've been hearing so many stories, not in the last 2 months, even when I was in opposition. So, to support the private sector, we are determined to improve the delivery of key government services. We've heard about digitization, e-governance, but I can tell you, we are not there. We are far from there. And we are working on that. I have talked about ease of doing business for many years. When I was in opposition, I'm still talking about it. But we are hoping that we will not just talk about this, but we're going to improve things like approval processes, obtaining permits, improving the delivery of social welfare support, improving the accessibility and delivery of education, and making sure that financial inclusion is seriously considered by the government and improved on. Because we believe that delivery of government services is very important to the private sector. And we know where the bottlenecks are. We have set up a cabinet subcommittee with my 2 other honorable deputy prime ministers, and 3 of us are very determined to ensure that we remove all the bottlenecks that exist. So I'm hoping that the Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation, you members, and as I said at the beginning, the wisdom resides here. Government's job is not to lecture businesses how to do businesses. Our job is to ensure that we provide you with the enabling environment. And that is what the government will do. And we cannot, as a government, achieve the objective, objective of achieving sustainable economic growth without your support, without your assistance, because that is what makes a country. The Honorable Prime Minister, as you will notice, in the last 2 months, we have set the country on a very clear path of genuine dialogue, consultation, and international collaboration. We had a very successful regional leaders forum. All our bilateral meetings, the sense of exuberance, the sense of confidence, the sense of optimism that we are seeing and we are hearing from stakeholders gives us, as a government, a lot of confidence that we are starting on the right path and that we are determined to not only sustain the economic recovery that is happening now, we want to accelerate that recovery, and we want to get back to pre-COVID levels in 2024, and thereafter set a path, a foundation for a sustained economic recovery beyond that. So once again, thank you for the invitation. Thank you all. I was told that today was oversubscription. That itself is an indication of confidence and optimism that I see everywhere. Thank you, Vinaka Bakaleu. Dhanyawad. Shukriya.